Well, delighted to be joined now by the director of the Popular Conservatives group, Mark Littlewood. And Mark, you've got a very interesting column out in the Telegraph today, building on Kemi Badenoch's metaphor of being a restaurant manager. She says that she doesn't need a menu to be to offer the electorate, to offer her potential customers at this point in time. Do you think she's right there, and is her love of metaphors perhaps holding her back?
Well, I rather liked her metaphor. One of the charming things about Kemi is she sort of thinks aloud on television and radio. I think we want more of that from our politicians. But I thought, as you said, in my Telegraph piece, I wanted Tom to delve a bit deeper into this restaurant analogy. Now, what Kemi's saying, which is true, is that she doesn't need to map out the entire Conservative manifesto 6, 7, 8 weeks into her leadership. There's 4 years until the next general election. But my concern is, even if she hasn't worked out every single ingredient on the menu or exactly how much salt to put in the soup, she does at least need to work out what sort of food she's selling. Is it pasta or curry or burgers or vegetarian? And therefore there are some big calls you need to make, even if you haven't worked out all of the technical details of the menu. So I think there are some bits which she considers to be menu items, like should we leave the ECHR? Should we abandon carbon net zero? What should the broad rate of tax be? And I don't think those are menu items. I think those are broad brand propositions. So I think while she can take her own sweet time in drawing up actual detailed technical policy plans, she needs to get some pretty clear signposts down, I think, early in the new year around the big issues that, frankly, Nigel Farage has been leading on and has been generating news headlines on and has been seeing his party tick up, not just in membership, but in the national opinion polls too.
Mark, to that extent, do you think it was a mistake that Kemi Badenoch sent this tweet out yesterday, that she's been talking about this row over what most people in the country might think is a relatively technical thing? I mean, the number of members that her party has, rather than talking about policy and what her party would be doing. Instead, she's arguing whether or not a counter on a reform website was algorithmic or programmatic.
That's right, I think, unless Kemi knows something that I don't. The one key rule of politics is sort of don't get involved in process issues. I doubt very many GB News viewers care about exactly how many members each party's got. It matters because it sort of talks to how many candidates you might be able to field in local elections, how many leaflet deliverers you've got on the ground, how many enthusiasts you've got knocking on doors. It matters to the party, but it doesn't matter to the average GB News viewer. It doesn't matter to the average elector. I mean, it's probably true that if you're to look at the two parties' membership figures, to be a bit of a political nerd here, that you are comparing apples and pears. For example, the Conservative figure of 131,800, I think that's the one that Reform have used, that was the number of ballot papers issued for the Jenrick versus Badenoch leadership contest in October. So it doesn't include anyone who's joined the Conservative Party since April, because you needed to have been a member for a good number of months to get that ballot paper. Of course, it doesn't include anyone who's resigned from the Conservative Party since the leadership election. And there's been a couple of high-profile cases there at least. So we're comparing apples and pears, but we are definitely comparing fruit with fruit. These are broadly the same numbers. Whether Reform has just overtaken the Conservatives at the exact second they said, I can't be sure, but their trajectory is on the up. And I would have much preferred the leader of the Conservative Party to concentrate on some bold policy proposals rather than to get into an argument with Nigel Farage and algorithms.
Comparing fruit with fruit. At least it's not comparing fruit cake with fruit cake, as perhaps David Cameron might once have said in an earlier political time. But Mark, you write something in your piece in the Telegraph that perhaps it explains far more than all of these technicalities or even the issue of policy. And that's if we're going to extend this restaurant metaphor about the Conservative Party. The people who used to eat at the Conservative restaurants came to believe that the staff at the restaurants were urinating in the soup.
So I do draw that analogy. As I said, I delve quite deep into this metaphor, Tom. I mean, I'm not sure I quite agree with Nigel Farage that the Conservative brand has been destroyed, but it's definitely been tarnished. Conservatives have got to realise that there are millions of people out there who refused to vote Conservative last time round because they no longer trust the brand. They don't think they're going to get the food that they ordered. They're typically ordering steak and chips and are then being served sort of vegetarian tofu ratatouille, and they've got a bit sick of it. So they're heading off to the shiny Farage-run McDonald's just across the street, where they know if they order a burger, Nigel Farage is going to give them a burger. So Kemi's inherited all of this. You can't really blame her for the 14-year inheritance, or certainly not very much of it. But she has got, in sort of business or restaurant terms, a big turnaround to do. The kitchen's been rat-infested. People don't trust the food. And the company's nearly bust, or certainly in the red. You know, the finances are not good. So she's got a hell of a lot on her plate to turn this around. But I think she's got to start turning it around by, you know, offering the customers, Conservative customers, what they want, which is actually some red meat conservatism. And if she doesn't do that, then Nigel Farage is going to continue to eat her lunch.
Well, Mark Littlewood, on that note, you can tell it's Christmas with all of the food metaphors, I think, under the sun. Thanks so much for joining us here on Merry Christmas, Britain.